Hello, my name is Antonio, and I will be talking about the African Americans during the Civil War, what they went through, what how what they went through affected them, and how it relates to some of the topics that we learned in class, and especially the women at the time, how what they went through, how it relates. First off, how it started. The overall conversion of slaves to troops, them switching sides and being labeled contraband of war. Uh, the reason for their naming, or I guess you could say the labeling of them being considered contraband of war, is kind of like a what would you say? They were considered stolen goods, objectified in a sense, and dehumanized, which also relates to a form of oppression that we learn, which is ideological, which is the principles and ideas that benefits the dominant group. As I'll talk about that more later on in the video. But, African Americans, they were deemed contraband as a result of some individuals switching sides and opting to fight for their freedom. They they were looked at as less than compared to their Caucasian counterparts, and more on that. They transitioned from being slaves to serving as troops, and all while facing scrutiny from their peers. Uh, Especially when President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, it granted the freedom to the slave people in the Confederate States, establishing them to join the Union Army, essentially making them free, but not fully free. Uh, his newfound liberty provided them with a strong motivation to fight for their freedom. It gave them a chance at life as people and gave them hope, not only as, you know, a way to break free from bondage, but also a chance to become something in society. And as Union armies advanced throughout the South, thousands of slaves sought refuge within their camps. And although, yeah, some of them did join up and fight for the Union Army, some of them were also mistreated and shunned out and ostracized, if you will. They were shunned out and treated differently, and they were denied the ability to join the war effort and essentially did their own thing or even went back to the plantations, if anything. Which I had no idea that was the case, but now I know. Uh, utilizing they utilized the freed African Americans as labor force, still kind of denying them that sense of individualism and still treating them as objects and a means of, like, as stated, labor, not to mention, just utilities for the army instead of actual soldiers fighting for them alongside of them. They're considered beneath them, thus giving them the name contraband of war. uh, to build more on that, life as a troop during the Civil War was not all that pretty, even though, regardless of what side they were on. Sure, yeah, they were treated less harshly on the Union side compared to the Confederates. They were still treated beneath, not even close to human, undergoing discrimination, racism, regardless of what side they fought for. The living conditions were poor, the unequal pay and benefits, even if they even had benefits to begin with. Um, just overall subjected to unfair treatment, including receiving lower wages, as mentioned, compared to the white counterparts and being provided with lower quality of food, supplies, and additionally, they were equipped with outdated or poorly managed weapons and gear, barely enough to survive and for their own means, and also to even help, which is kind of redundant when you think about it, because you want to win a war by any means necessary, but you're given poor equipment to barely fight with, which honestly, I'm proud of my people for making amends and making means with what they were what they received. They still made the best of it. They still made the most of it, which shows that kind of resilience and effort, no matter the circumstance. Let's see. Uh, Contrast to the equipment provided to the white troops and advanced opportunities were scarce for them. They could not promote as much compared to other troops that were not African. Soldiers rarely being able to progress in higher ranks due to that systematic racism and discrimination. Despite fighting for the Union, if captured by Confederate forces, they were subject to severe treatment. Obviously, but yes, they were subjected to that type of treatment. They're torture, threatened to threatened execution, regardless of what kind of execution it was, even if it was cruel and unusual. The mistreatment of African American prisoners of the war in Confederate prison camps is a tragic and often overlooked chapter in African American history, despite the already brutal conditions of the Civil War camps. African American prisoners face even harsher treatment, including inadequate food. Once again, the clothing was poor, the sheltering, if they even had sheltering, they experienced severe serve as a sobering reminder that the deep injustice and suffering endured during these times were just a reminder. That also relates to another topic that we talked about in the overall colonialism, kind of like the institutionalization of the troops and prisoners, kind of breaking them down, uh, enforcing their own ideologies and culture and ways and customs onto the troops, onto the prisoners, onto African Americans in general. Kind of having them lose that sense of self and sense of identity and culture over the years really put a strain on African American culture. And especially the women at the time, how the women they were affected, the forced labor, the family disruptions, the challenges after the war. Uh, the absence of men during that time meant that women can only take on more responsibilities both at home and in the workforce, all for their family or for themselves, which was a tough challenge for them. I congratulate them for that, as that is a lot to endure as just if anything, a single mother. And I, not me personally, but I can relate to that. Personally, my mom was a single mom, and that is a lot of strength in a woman, an individual at that. They had to manage the farms, the businesses, take care of their families all at the same time. This period marked a significant shift in general responsibilities, such as women had to adapt to new challenges and pressures, despite the potential for freedom and the war presented. They were often obligated to continue their domestic and field labor on the plantations, as mentioned, assuming additional responsibilities to ensure their family survival. It was a tough time for them. They undergo a lot of mistreatment, sexual abuse, if anything, which no one should ever have to go through. Uh, they were at the forefront of adversity, constant belittling and just oppression. And this stuff like this for both men and women at the time still lingered onto current day situations and kind of had a imprint on current day, which is my next point, how the current day is affected. There's racial tensions, regional differences, shifting culture, effects of the Civil War and its aftermath has reverberated through generations, shaping the social, economic, and political things of the United States. The unresolved racial tensions stemming from that time add to societal structures contributing racial inequalities and friction. Excuse me. Um, just ongoing dialogues about the racism, even police brutality, regional differences, and economic differences, whether it be class, race, gender, positions. Um, just a lot to deal with. Furthermore, the art has a significant role, cultural expression over the time, societal values. There's one particular artist, I forget the name, but he does a lot of abstract art. He's an African American artist from the late 90s. Uh, Made a very large impact in African culture. And yeah, this is my presentation. One thing I'd like to ask is if you could share one thing that you learned from this presentation. I know it was a little bit long, but yeah, here's my works cited. Thank you.